mic might fall off.
I know it's slipping
This is great.
just
I'm
a
so
little
excited.
bit.
Starting
We're
to
gonna
fall.
find out if it falls off. Everybody pray for me. Anyway, welcome to session 7, the session that was never supposed to happen. We told
Bonus
everybody this
session.
was 6
Oh,
sessions.
but it was supposed to happen.
But it was. It was meant to be. Here we are. Grief and forgiveness, the two things that go together for a nice ending rally. I don't know. I just know this is going to be an incredible session. It's a nice bookend to the whole thing. I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's not an intuitive combination. Grief and
No,
forgiveness.
no, he weaves them together beautifully,
Mhm.
which I'm sure anybody could guess at this point. So this is our last session. As you know, everything can be found at missionventura.com/changeworkshop, which maybe is where you clicked on this if you're watching on demand. One thing that you'll see, I put it, I think, 4 different places on session 7's page. It's a completion form. Here's the thing. We got a lot of seats here, and none of you are in them. So we have no idea, for the most part, who's going through this thing. And one thing we'd love to know is first of all, whoever completes it. So it's been a long journey together and a big one. And so we'd love to know if you completed the thing. So that's that completion form. And there's some feedback on there that I think would just help us a ton. We have never done this before, believe it or not, this change workshop. And we love to know what worked and what didn't, what you used. We threw some things at the wall and wanted to see what stuck.
Yeah, and Michael's never done
Maybe
this
what?
before this way either. He's
Right. Oh, yeah.
only and always done a live
Right.
workshop over a day and a half.
Yeah,
So
so
even
this
the
is
idea of
totally
stretching the content out over multiple weeks, like your feedback of knowing whether that was helpful or you
Yep.
lost momentum because of that,
Yep.
like it's really going to be helpful feedback.
Yeah, so that completion form, we'll drop it in the chat too. But once you're done with this session, make sure you fill that out and give us some feedback. It would be unbelievably helpful. And that's the best way that we can inform you about potential next steps that are kind of customized to you as somebody who finished it. After this is over, because we got a lot more things. We got a lot more things in mind. We literally have a 4-hour meeting coming up, just trying to figure out how to work more with Michael in the future and figure out how to get more of this stuff throughout the church and our ministry. So, last thing,
But
then
really,
before
secretly, we're probably going to hijack that and turn it into a 4-hour therapy session.
That's mostly
ask him
what
all of our
happens.
Yeah, strategy
meet
aside,
with Michael.
how do you fix me?
Yeah, it happens
Sorry,
too often. I'm
interrupted
sure
you.
he's used to it. The other thing, we'll talk about change groups a little bit at the end of tonight, and how we're looking to launch them in January of 2021. But specifically, then there's a bonus video on this session. We linked it on the content page, so you could get a little bit. It's like a 3-minute video, but it gives you a little bit more of a picture of what to expect in a change group, even the commitment level and all that stuff. And so, make sure to give that a watch after we're done. Besides that, anything else you want to say before we get rolling?
No. It's
Awesome.
Great.
We are here with Grieving and Forgiveness, session 7. Here we go.
So the next thing that can prevent us from being able to move on, and this is important and most people don't even realize it, is God gave us 2 ways to be able to move on from loss. And those 2 ways are grieving and forgiveness. And if you don't do both of these things, you won't be able to move on. Okay. In other words, your past will continue to sabotage your future. Okay? You got it? Okay. So, the same woman I'm working with, she's been a Genesis counselor and everything. Remember I told you, had been abused by her father so brutally. Well, she was stuck, and I didn't see this before, that she'd forgiven him 1,000,000 times. Right? She was also an enabler because she was still having contact with him and alleviating the consequences of the destruction that he did, especially legally. Right? But what I found is that she wasn't able to move on because she was stuck in the grieving process. Okay? So this is the process we go through anytime we suffer loss, whether it's a big loss of a loved one or, one of the things that most of us haven't grieved is the loss of ourself, of my goals, my dreams, who I could have been, if I'd had good parents and different circumstances, or this hadn't happened, that hadn't happened, see? So, but she was stuck, and this is for, 35 years, she'd never grieved what had been done to her. She was still in the denial section, okay? And then she's just starting to now to allow herself to be angry, because especially codependents, don't do angry. And of course, that's the two emotions that you grow up in an abusive, or dysfunctional home. There's two emotions you're not allowed to show, okay? Anger and sadness, because that reflects on them. So if you're sad, what do you have to be sad about? I go to work every day, what do you have to be angry? And especially for men, kids who are angry, they take that with disrespect, and that can cause them to be violent. Okay? So the next one is anger. You go through that stage, I'm angry at what has happened. Then, you go through depression, you're sad, okay? And then bargaining. And then finally, after you go through these stages, you come out with acceptance. Acceptance of the things I cannot change, all that, right? And then you're able to move on. Let me give you an example. Okay, just a simple example, okay? Say you lost a $100 bill, and that $100 bill was for groceries, and that's what it was for, and you didn't have another $100 to do it with. So, you lose that $100 bill, you can't find it. So first you're in denial. Well, I didn't really lose it, it's here someplace, Then the anger section. Well, if my kids hadn't been so loud, my husband hadn't been such a jerk this morning, he wouldn't have, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have been, so frustrated, and I would remember where I put it, and I wouldn't have lost it, or, whatever happened, And then depression. Oh, man, I lost that $100 bill, and I don't know what I'm going to do, right? And then the bargaining. Oh, God, if you help me find that $100 bill, show me where it is, I'll give you 20%. No, 30%. How could he turn down a deal like that? You know what I mean? And so you're bargaining. And then, of course, after a while, this is just, the short term of grieving. Some of these things take years, okay? And then you get to acceptance. Well, I lost a $100 bill, so I'm going to have to figure something else, and you move on. But most everybody goes through these stages. Sometimes people stay stuck longer, and with the addicts and people with addictions, a lot of bad stuff happen while they're in their addiction. People hurt friends, they rip people off, they and they never, because they're in their anesthetic, usage, they never grieved. Okay? So it's really a part of the recovery to be able to do that. They have, in AA they have the fourth and fifth steps, a moral inventory, and to be able to do this. Okay, so yeah. So anyway, when we're working with people, we look at the loss they had in their life, and I would try to identify. Have they gone through this cycle? And especially for codependents, they never allow themselves to feel anger. There's a blockage there because they feel, that they don't deserve it, or they don't have a right to it. So, did you have a question, anybody?
I found this huge in my life, the whole grief process, and being given permission. I think you have to be given permission to be angry, especially if you've heard, don't be angry, it's a sin. But it's huge in moving on. I mean, I've found for myself personally, and doing some practical things if it's somebody that's hurt me deeply, to write a letter, my honest feelings, and not send it, but to just get it all out in an effort, and just grieve the loss, because a lot of times for me, it's kept me stuck for years, especially in relationships that ended. And it's like I was in a relationship with someone, say for 10 years, a good female friend, and then it ended. And 10 years later, I still feel deep sadness about it. And I found when I have just given myself permission to grieve, be angry, and kind of go through that cycle, although I didn't know all the parts of it, it has made a huge difference in moving on.
Yeah.
So I love that.
And you can go through it much faster if you don't go through it alone. Okay? You have a supportive group that gives you permission to feel angry. You know, what happened to you makes me angry. You know, and sometimes you can say, oh, really? You know, why? Because he stole your life. He stole your health. You know, he cheated on you, did this, you know, the guy's a jerk, or, you know, whatever it is, you see. And you can go, yeah, you know. And so, once again, you know, we just can't get to where we want to go alone.
There again, giving yourself permission to talk to other people about it, because there's also kind of a stigma of, you know, you don't want to talk bad about anybody, but then if you're with a safe group and they're helping you navigate it, it's a different situation.
Yeah. And of course, you know, it's these relationships that last, you know, that it's a safe place. Even though you feel like you don't have the right to be angry, or you don't have the right to bargain or get mad at God, you know, for these things, you know, that the group can give you, or friends, or, you know, even spouse or whatever, can give you permission to do that. And you won't take 10 years getting through this before you can move on. And, you know, it's one of the reasons they say that, you know, when you get, you know, through betrayal and a divorce or something, you don't want to get into a new relationship too quick because you haven't let go of the old one yet. So your thoughts and intentions and perspective of the new relationship is going to be distorted. See? And so divorce is a good example of having the support. And that's, you know, they have divorce support groups and, you know, Al-Anon, all these kinds of things that help you move through this. So you can go, all right, I'm done with that. Now I can start to date again, or I can start to, you know, fill that empty place.
Michael, I think I've heard you talk about before in this cycle that a lot of times men can get stuck in anger or even be addicted to anger because they don't want to like let the feelings of depression or whatever like fall on them. So what would you say if someone is kind of stuck in that anger and it's like, I'm just angry all the time and I don't know how to move forward? Like how would, not asking for a friend because I never get stuck in my anger, but like what would be the step out of that? Like how do you take a step past anger and actually process that and get it out? Because sometimes I process it on everybody that's around me instead of actually like processing it to get to that step.
Let's see if I can do that speech in a short one, okay? Anger, it's one of those emotions. God gave us anger, okay? And what righteous anger is, okay, is it gives us the courage to overcome injustice. Okay? David and Goliath, Jesus in the temple, you know, it's righteous anger. And it gives you courage, you know, to overcome injustice. You know, World War II, you know, all these kinds of things. You had national courage because there was real injustice. So the role of anger is to anesthetize fear, mainly, okay? So what about the fear of intimacy? What about the fear of disrespect? What about the fear of betrayal? What about the fear of rejection? What about the fear of abandonment? These kinds of things. These are emotions you need to feel because there's a message in it for you to move on. So anger anesthetizes the fear of those things, see, or the things you should feel. But the main role of anger, especially in men, from my experience, that are addicted to anger, it's a protective personality from shame. There was a time, shame is one of our worst emotions. It's something we hate to feel. So once again, somewhere around 7 or 8 years old seems to be, it might be other times, but it seems to be very common, that a kid felt such shame that I was so embarrassed or so ashamed I thought I was going to die. You ever heard that? And so the limbic system says, we're never going to feel that again. That was awful emotion. Okay? And so, but the thing is when your limbic system shuts off your emotions, it does them all but one, which is anger, because it anesthetizes all the others. So you can't be angry and wrong at the same time, because being wrong has to do with shame and guilt and apologizing and owning your stuff. See? But if you can't go there, anger, it's always somebody else's fault. I'm always justified. Okay? So those are some of the roles of anger. That was a short speech on that. Okay? So
Those short speeches, man,
That's my short speech.
they are
on that.
not.
I love that.
He just wants to glance over them, but they're so good. Yeah, he said something at the beginning that I just, again, don't want to move too quickly past it. He said you have to do both grieving and forgiveness to move
Right.
on. If not, your past will continue to sabotage your future.
Right.
That was new thinking for me to connect those two.
Yeah,
That-
which is like right out of the gate, he comes with connecting the two things that are like, why are we combining these? Like, oh, for time's sake. No, he's got a plan for
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Well, it's interesting for me. I'm glad you said this because I didn't know why I saw this connection, I guess. But it seems to me like it's hard to grieve. I'm thinking about the multiple things I've had to grieve, and it's something bad that happens that isn't really somebody's fault. So usually somebody's death, right? Like I need to grieve that. There's clear loss there. But nobody, like, most likely it wasn't somebody's clear fault. But then there's when somebody does something to me and they've robbed me of something. And I have some pretty clear examples of that in my life, and I didn't connect that with grief. I thought it was just forgiveness.
Yeah.
But it was actually the path to forgiveness for me was realizing what I lost. And then for me, it was actually being angry about it. My anger was, and this was after 3 years in this specific case, but it was like because I knew I needed to forgive and that I hadn't, I realized what was lost. And then I had to go through the cycle, and then that brought me to actually be able to forgive because I knew what was
Well, and part of what
stolen
those
from me.
two things help, and Rebecca kind of mentioned this in the comment, I really asked the question around like realizing there's a lot of different things that are coming up around anger. And the grief process being connected to that helps identify the thing that we're angry about
Yeah.
in some ways.
Yeah.
That actually then once it's name the sucker right now, once
Right.
we name this thing, we can actually address it, start to work through it,
Right.
identify the feelings, behaviors associated with it, or false belief system behind it. Like,
Right.
so it's a helpful like starting point even to go like, what have I lost? What am I grieving?
Yeah, and that's something real to be angry about. That's why I think it's important to know none of the other things are well. They're all bad because they're parts of the hard process, but they're just the things that we do
Yeah.
very clearly. And so anger's not this like, well, this is the wrong part. No, it's just part of it because something was stolen from you, and that's okay. And so it's just important.
Yeah, the most convicting part of this one for me, which is I hate it when there's conviction. Like I want it to be helpful, and I'm like, ooh,
Yeah,
observation.
I want it to be happy.
Not
yeah.
conviction, was when he said the two emotions not allowed to be shown in a dysfunctional home are sadness and anger. I was like, oh my gosh, I, as a dad, am creating a dysfunctional home. Because my 8-year-old, who's super
Yeah.
expressive and he's able to articulate his emotions incredibly well,
Right.
like incredibly well,
Yeah.
he will say that he's sad, and I will just, I have to fight everything to go like, I don't know why you're sad about that. Like, that's
Yeah.
not something to be sad
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Or he gets really angry, and then I want to correct his disrespectful tone and
Right.
all of that. And he's
Right.
literally telling me, well, it's because you're making me angry. And I'm like, well, you're being disrespectful. So I'm like, oh my goodness.
I'll fix my
wounding him
tone
right
when
now.
you fix how you talk to me, Dad.
He's not going to be allowed to watch this for 20 years. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, well, you don't want to let him know. Yeah,
Right, exactly.
You're the dysfunction.
Yep.
Not him. Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was really good about this, and then we can move on, but was that when he talked about the role of anger, is to anesthetize fear.
Right.
And so righteous anger helps
It's-
do that for the productive, for the right reason.
Right to combat injustice and overcome something. Right.
Yep. Yep. But often in men, it's a protective personality from shame.
Right.
It's like, oh man, that's so true. Like you can just see that when you have a sensitive thing that someone's close to, like anger
Yeah.
is a totally defense mechanism to protect yourself and keep them from the thing that hurts.
Comes
right?
back to
So,
that push the button. Like, well,
Yep. Well,
you,
who put the
you
button
pushed
there?
my button. How dare you?
Well, who put that button
No,
there?
it's my button, I guess. What stuck out to me that was interesting that I think I've struggled with a lot actually is those two things that are easy to grieve: the loss of somebody or something that's clear and obvious because it just happened,
Yep.
and I have to deal with it. When somebody steals something from me, challenging because I'm just angry, but it's the loss that I have to grieve. The hard part is when it's my fault, when I do something and I robbed myself of something, because the problem is that the shame is really challenging because I feel so shameful about the thing I did that I don't think I deserve to grieve it because it was my fault in the first place. And so I think that's a really challenging thing for me because I need to go through it and realize, yes, I'm the perpetrator, but also I'm a victim of my own sin. And I've struggled with that one a lot, and it's been very challenging. But it's been the most helpful thing for me to get out of the shame cycle. To go, okay, that stole something from me, and that makes it actually clearer that I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that stolen from me, and I know that it's not. It helps me from blaming actually my own grief over what my own sin has like stolen from me, or my addiction, or my coping mechanisms. That's the thing that actually can break the shame cycle for me because I realize I don't want to be that person, and I want that thing, that good thing.
Yeah.
And if I don't grieve it, then I'll just get stuck in the cycle even more. So that was an interesting one for me to realize that grief is, no matter what, if you lose something, you have to grieve it, no matter who the perpetrator is. Which that was new
Yeah.
for me.
That's crazy. So my last thing, and then we can move on to the forgiveness side of this thing. But when you said you can't be angry and wrong at the same time, I'm so wired to be like, not true. Like just to fight it.
Not like that. You did say that
I
to
did
him.
say
The
that
first
to him.
time he said
Oh,
that to
100%.
you.
He's like, you can't be, and I'm like, absolutely. Every time I'm wrong, I'm incredibly angry at the same time.
It goes great.
Like I
actually.
hate being wrong. That's for my personality.
They
that
always go
is
together.
the like version of hell is constantly being wrong. Like I
It's
can't.
the worst.
But when he
thing.
ties it to like, oh, because wrong meaning like admitting
Right.
that you're wrong, like humility that's
Yeah.
needed to go there. You can't be angry and humble at the same
Right,
time. Like I was like,
because-
oh, that's one of those things that he says it's true. I just want to fight it so
It
bad.
just makes you angry.
Yes, yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
There we go.
So let's work on forgiveness.
Yeah, so we're gonna move on to forgiveness. This is a longer video because he's gonna tee it up for a while about the power of forgiveness, the place that it has in our recovery, but then also he's gonna work through a worksheet. And this worksheet isn't like, let's just do this real quick and easy. Like, this is one that's probably gonna take some work. And so it's on the session 7 page of missionventura.com/change workshop. So you can go there and just take a look at it and follow along. He's gonna lead Taylor through it on the panel. No, he's going to lead them all through it, and then he's going to debrief it quickly. Actually, not with Taylor. That was another one that they're all mixed up in my head.
He
We all
walks
know
through with
this.
Ruth a little bit.
He walks through it with Ruth a little bit. It's too personal to like do a deep dive on, but this is a good one to like sit down and do some work on eventually. But it'd be good to be able to work through it a little bit, kind of put some notes in even as you go. So make sure you grab that as we start this next one, and we'll be back with you after that. Here is forgiveness.
Okay, the next thing, remember 2 ways to move on. We did grieving, and the other, even more powerful way is forgiveness. Okay? So let's look at the power of forgiveness. Okay, Jesus talks, one of the scariest scriptures in the Bible, at least for me, okay, where he talked about the Lord's Prayer. And said, and forgive us our debts as we have forgiven our debtors. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will forgive you also. But then, this is, and I put this out to a couple of theology classes, just to give them something to think about, right? And that's why they don't invite me back. Okay? But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. What does that mean? As a Christian, I'm saved, by grace and all that. But if I don't forgive others and God's not going to forgive me, where does that leave me? I haven't heard anybody be able to answer that yet. But I think what Jesus is telling us is that forgiveness is so powerful in being able to move on in our lives, okay, that it can have eternal consequences. So it's not an option. It's in order to be healthy human beings, we have to learn to forgive. So if you are willing to forgive, this exercise can make you able to forgive. Let me see where I go next. Okay. Let me give you an example of this. I was working with a woman, and she was in her early 30s, and she'd been, horribly abused by her parents, especially her father, right? And so we started to go through this exercise, and her father had died. So he goes, how do I forgive and reconcile with him after he's already died? So it was one of those those God moments where we were both kind of praying through this, and we both saw the same picture. She was in a graveyard, kind of like, in those old movies where the things are tilted and the leaves are on the ground and a gray day and all that. And she's standing over her father's grave, right? And she's looking down at him. She starts to walk away, and this hand comes up out of the grave and grabs her by the ankle. And she realized that he was still controlling her life by her unforgiveness. Yeah? It was a powerful moment for her to have an experience, which is what she needed, not just information, like you got to forgive him, right? But this really motivated her. Okay, so forgiveness is important because it gives you the ability to move on in life, okay? And these things are, if you have the handout, it's the beginning, in the middle of your handout, okay? Unforgiveness ties you to your past hurts and make it difficult to receive the blessings of new relationships. So forgiveness comes from the one hurt by canceling the debt that's owed. And we'll talk about that. There's no need for participation from the perpetrator. Reconciliation, on the other hand, comes from the perpetrator by apologizing and asking for forgiveness. But you don't need any participation from them to forgive. In other words, you forgive to free yourself from the ones who hurt you. Okay, so
that is powerful, because we think sometimes, like, we get stuck in the cycle of unforgiveness because they don't deserve it or they haven't asked for it, but that's not what forgiveness is. I love what you just said. Forgiveness is my letting them off the hook,
right,
so that I can be free. Reconciliation is the relational restoration that they're asking for. That's a huge difference.
Two totally different things.
Yeah,
okay?
Great.
So we're going to look at that. So in doing this with clients and in my own life, I have a lot of stuff I need to try and forgive people for in my own life, especially since I became a Christian. So false beliefs. Remember, beliefs can keep us from being able to do the things that we intentionally want to do, okay? So false beliefs can hinder your forgiveness and make you unable to forgive those who hurt you, okay? Which allows them to continue to control your life. Okay? Remember, you forgive has nothing to do with them. You forgive to free yourself, okay? So let's look at some of the false beliefs. These are some of the ones that sabotages people being willing to forgive, including myself. Okay? False belief. If I forgive them, they will go free and there will never be any justice. Okay? True belief. Only God knows what is just, and punishment is in God's hands. Okay? The next one, false belief. Forgiveness means that I must pretend that nothing ever happened. The true belief is forgiveness is not denial. You have to tell yourself the truth and don't minimize it in order to forgive. This is mostly true, especially with our parents. Oh, it was a horrible childhood, but they did the best they could. You see? It's minimizing. You have to really be honest with yourself about what they did and how it affected you, which is really difficult for a lot of people, because if you don't do that, you can't really forgive them when you can't even allow yourself to admit what they did and how it screwed you up, okay? So, false belief, if I forgive them, I will become vulnerable to them again. This is one of the biggest ones. Forgiving someone doesn't mean that they are safe and you have to trust them again. I have a sibling that did a lot of bad stuff because I grew up and everything, and I really have forgiven them, but they haven't changed, and I'm not going to have any relationship with them because they haven't changed, and I'm not just going to allow them to hurt me again. See? So just because I forgive them doesn't mean I have to trust them or have a relationship again unless I've seen some change in them. See? Make sense? Okay. So another false belief is forgiveness is justified because I'm right and they will never see they're wrong and repent if I let go. My unforgiveness only hurts me and allows what they did to continue to control my life. I call this going back to court. I go back to court, and in this court system, they're guilty and they're shamed and they apologize, and this argument going on in my head. I should have said this, and that would have really made them, give justice. See? But of course, as human beings, we don't really have any idea what is just. Look at our world. Only God knows what is just, and we have to be able to, once again, take that step of faith and turn this person over to Him, that justice will be in His hands. With David and Samuel, man sees the outer appearance, but only God can see their heart. So I'm going to take you through this. This is a forgiveness worksheet, okay? So I'm going to talk you through it, and then I'm going to pray you through it. Okay? So, first thing I'm just going to ask the Lord, come in here and be with us. These are deep heart wounds that we experience, and where someone stole something from us, and we need to cancel their debt. And so I ask right now, Lord, that you would bring to each person's mind here the person that you want them and they need to forgive. Don't argue with them, just whoever comes to your mind, just be obedient to that. Okay? So in the first box, write person. Write their name down. Okay, in the next box, what was the wound? They abused you, abandoned you. I think the number one word is betrayed. There's a sense of trust, and they betrayed that trust. They shamed you, physical, mental, social, spiritual abuse. But betrayal is the big one, okay? Now, the other one that can prevent us is our judgments. Like when I was going to say, okay, God, I forgive that jerk, And He goes, let's go back to the jerk part, okay? Because judgments, right, are, like I say, where we're seeing someone's heart, not just their behavior. That's the Holy Spirit's territory. So when you think of this person, what do you call them? They're stupid, they're jerk, they're selfish, they're angry, they're bad person. Why do you think they did what they did? That's the kind of person they are. Self-centered, selfish, uncaring. Bad person. Okay? And so the next one is what the Bible calls a vow, or what we call survival lies, right? In other words, what did you tell yourself to survive this? I will never trust any authority figures again. You know, all men are, all women are. And the trouble with a vow is, it's like where you cursed yourself. You put an injunction on your life. I will never, all people are, I don't trust anybody. Remember all the survival lies from the, from the false beliefs worksheet. So you might want to go back to that worksheet if you're out there and look at some of those belief systems that came out of there, like those vows, and see which one of them came out of this wound. Okay? Now the next one is, what effect did it have on you? How'd you cope with this? Yeah? You became promiscuous, you started using drugs and alcohol, you isolated, lost your ability to trust, affected your health. A lot of times with the forgiveness sheet too, people don't understand that maybe the most thing they needed to do is forgive themselves for the mistakes they made and how they hurt other people. And another thing that people resist doing is forgiving God. Why did you let all those bad things happen? Why did you let my dad do this, And where were you when I needed you? Okay? God can handle that. Okay? Okay? So you might want to do this, more than once. Okay. I'm just taking you through it now, okay? Now, this is the most important one, is what do they owe you? An apology, justice, money, reconciliation, your childhood, your hopes, your dreams. Okay, you can do this more thoroughly later, okay? But now I'm just going to take you through it, okay? Now we're going to do the spiritual work. This is where we partner with God to make you able to forgive this person. And, that's where the Holy Spirit makes us able to do things we can't just do on our own, even if we have good intentions, okay? So Lord, I ask you to come once again and lead each person through this, that they're willing to forgive. And I pray that through this exercise, your Spirit would make them able to really let go of this wound in this person and cancel their debt and move on in life. Okay, so the first one we're going to do is the judgment and unforgiveness. It says, judgments are sin. Even though how true they may feel, that you know why this person did what they were or the kind of person they are, okay? I want you to ask forgiveness and renounce your judgments. And look at the ones you wrote down there. So you're judging this person's intentions and their hearts, and only God can do that. And these can prevent you from being able to forgive. Step of faith, isn't it? Now the next one is the vow or survival lie. Look at the things you told yourself to survive this. I will never trust. And renounce those. And Jesus says, don't make a vow. Yeah? So renounce these injunctions that you put on yourself. Now the last one is the most important, and it's what Jesus tells us, that we need to cancel their debt, just as Jesus canceled our debt. And so sometimes you actually need to picture this person and just kind of looking at them and say, whatever list you put over here, say, you don't owe me money anymore. You don't owe me my childhood. You don't owe me an apology or justice. And you just need to really trust the Holy Spirit to enable you to cancel their debt. And that's what sets you free. So do this and partner with Him. Okay, now if you turn to the next page that's on your thing there, I think it says page 196. We've done a lot here, haven't we? Okay. Okay, and I'll read it out loud because we're on a video, but usually I just have people do this themselves, okay? And so this is a freeing prayer of releasing that person's into God's hands. And so the blank places, you just fill in their name there, okay, as you go through. Father, your word says that in order to be forgiven, I must forgive. I come to you in the name of Jesus in obedience and love, and I bring you their name, okay, before you. I cancel their debt. I choose to forgive this hurt against me and ask you that you not hold the sin against them, okay, on my account. I release them from any desire on my part to see them punished. In fact, as you told me, in fact, as you have told me to do, I bless them in your Son's name, Jesus. You know their name, who they are, desires, needs, and hurts. And you know what would be a blessing for them. Okay? I ask that you would point out your love and healing for them and their life and bring him to your highest good. Because your name is love, and you are not willing that any should perish. Now also, Father, please heal my heart and set me free to love this person as you do, in Jesus' name. Now, one more little thing I want you to do. Just stay inside, keep your eyes closed, okay? Jesus, I ask you to come and show each person here, this person that hurt them, as you see them. Amen. Okay. Thank you guys for doing this. I know it's very, I'm not going to take you through it because it's too personal. But just before we close, when I asked him to show you that person as he sees them, did any of you see something? What did you see, Ruth?
I just had a picture of them as little kid, 3 or 4. And, hurt and vulnerable. And anyway, it was powerful. You can't hate a little 3-year-old,
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's the picture God gave me.
Yeah. It's real common that they see a person, especially the men, our fathers and all, is like around a 7 or 8-year-old boy who's just angry and just has stayed stuck there in that anger for 50 years or whatever, okay?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is I know this person's story now. I didn't back when they hurt me, but I know their story. And, and I think I excused a lot of the hurt because I was like, well, they were wounded, so they wounded me. So I think part of the, where I have gotten stuck is, not grieving while not getting through, because I think I had some denial with,
Right.
or excusing, or,
Yeah.
oh, well, it's okay because, that happened to them, Anyway, that was
Yeah.
crazy.
So hopefully this will change because it was a powerful experience. That means it's something that we're still carrying with you, okay? So,
Well, there we go.
Yeah, it was just so easy. Man,
well, ending on a light note. Yeah.
It's so challenging, the words of Jesus, right? That forgiveness is not an option. And it's really something that I think you gotta be careful, like saying it to some people, because
Yeah.
I've had situations where I've counseled individuals and been like, man, I need to tell them this isn't an option. They have to forgive, but they're not in a place where they're
Right.
going to hear anything but attacked in that. So again, just a couple of things that I think are so important. What he's kind of woven throughout the theme of the last 7 weeks, right? Is you got to do it in community. You can't do it alone, but you need to do it in a community where there's accountability and support. Not just accountability, but
right.
support as well. Because talking through this exercise, you mentioned you can go through it faster if you don't do it alone.
Yeah, which you don't want to stay in this spot forever, right?
Mhm.
Like this is
Right.
hard, and it's unbelievably heavy. And so faster is actually better in this scenario if it's the right kind of
Oh yeah.
faster
Well, you want to get through
with
it for sure.
people. Yeah, yeah.
The worksheet, I could see how this may take several times to work
Oh,
through
yeah.
because
Oh, yeah.
as I was kind of working through it, I'm like, wow, I'm uncovering some things here that I probably need to sit with or need to reflect on, or it's bringing up new thoughts or feelings that I hadn't
Right.
really addressed. And
Right.
so even just the way that he worked through that pretty slowly, I think it was pretty helpful. But that was my only thought of like, I wonder how many times I might need to work through that.
Well, it
depending
becomes
on-
just like a framework at that point. And you
Mhm.
work this enough, and it becomes a clear framework for when somebody you realize like, oh, the maybe even a lot of offenses have built up into a thing where I've something between us, and I know that I need to fix the relationship, but first I have to do my work. And you just start realizing, well, this is exactly the process I have to go through. I have to check all the boxes to make sure I understand fully what I'm forgiving and not. And I think that's the important thing. We talk sometimes where you hear like, you just got to let it go.
Mhm.
And then the Frozen song starts, and it's all
Only
of
in
that.
your head.
Always in my head. It never goes away. 5-year-old daughter. Anyway, the problem with that is like there's nothing about that worksheet or that template of forgiveness that includes letting something go. You don't just go like, well, nah, it hurt, but I release you.
Right.
Like, no, that's called denial.
No, because the goal
Like-
is nothing goes away until it's resolved.
Right. And so it's resolve it. So it's
Right.
release the person, not let go of the offense. And I think that's really important and very different, and why you have to go through the whole process and why those false beliefs are
Mhm.
huge. Because, I mean, we were talking about several of them, but just the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiveness is something that I do that I need no participation So like I don't even get to work out the forgiveness thing between us. That's all reconciliation territory, which is different. And I'm never going to reconcile if I haven't forgiven you, probably. Like that's something I have to do first. And I think that was huge. Um, and it's interesting too. He talked about not minimizing the consequences.
Mhm.
Like if we minimize it, then we're not actually forgiving something because it'll just come back around later because time doesn't heal all wounds.
Well, because minimizing in that context
Right.
is us not processing what we need to process
Right.
and what we need to forgive them for and what we were wounded because we're minimizing it.
And not grieving either. We're not
yeah.
grieving the actual loss
Yeah.
because something was lost.
So do you want to talk about next steps
I would love
and
to.
where we go from here now that
we're
this
done.
is done
That's
and some
it.
of us are grieving the fact that it's done?
It's all over. Yes, so the first most important thing, you're done with the session. Do the completion form for us. If you have enjoyed any moments that you spent with Jim and I, fill out the completion form for us. Mostly
Probably
for
not that.
him. No.
Maybe if Michael's been
please just-
helpful.
Yeah, that
Fill
one.
that out.
Please fill it out. We honestly, it'll help us immensely, especially in figuring out how to promote this to other people and like in the future, figure out what we can make better. We want to hone it in. Fill out the completion form. We'll love you forever. Second thing is change groups. We're like we've said, we're aiming to start them in January. We've got on the completion form actually. We have a thing that says yes, I would like to be on there. So really, all you have to do is that you don't have to fill out the separate form if you don't want. Just fill out that completion form and say yes, I would be interested in one. That would be super helpful. And the thing about a change group too, I don't think we've even explained it super fully. There's a, like I said, 3.5 minute video on the content page that you can watch to give you a really clear picture. But it's 20 processes. Okay, so Michael and Kathy, they've built 20 processes that he has hinted at. Several of them, right? But there's plenty more, and it's all about like the first half is really diving into what's wrong, and then the second half is all about how do I move on from here, and it is unbelievably thorough. You will do the work. You will. That's the thing about it. When I say thorough, I mean like it's high commitment. It's only 5 people in a group, which is great because you're not like sharing your whole world with 12 other people. It's like, no, to do this work, it's a small group. It's a trained facilitator. That's one of the reasons we're not starting until January is we're training facilitators over the course of the next couple months. So it's somebody who is ready to handle whatever comes up. And then the amazing thing about it is you're taking weekly risks. That's the big thing. Like he says, risk is where change comes from. And that's what you do every week. You identify nobody tells you, you identify your own risk to take that will move you toward the change that you want to see. And so you get to set a big risk, you get to set a small risk. It just has to be a risk. And you do that and somebody checks in with you and you're checking in with somebody else. High accountability.
Wait, there's accountability?
High support. No, it's all support. You can do it. Good luck. No, it's high accountability, high support, high commitment, and high levels of change. And so it's really incredible experience.
It's 6 months.
It's about 6 months. It depends on a couple
and
things, but
homework every week.
homework every week.
and
You're working the whole time.
The other thing I would maybe add is it's super high structure for a group.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the
that is
facilitator is not a counselor. The
Right.
facilitator is helping manage the process that the group is going through. So
Keep
if
the
you
guardrails up.
because if
Yeah.
you don't have any recovery experience and you only have small group experience, church groups or the class, like there's no crosstalk. Like that is not. That's part of what creates a safe environment.
Yep.
So if you're kind of even wondering like, will it be safe? What makes it safe is this really high structure
Yep.
around like amount of time someone can talk and not cross talking and
Well, there's
honoring
no unsolicited
confidentiality. We
advice
can't talk
there's-
about who's in the group
Yep.
with other people. I mean, they've done this for a long time.
Long time
and,
with
and-
lots of people.
and it works. So if they're interested in taking
Yeah,
that next
if
step,
they're
how do they make
interested,
sure they're
Hit
in
that
the loop?
completion form and let us know in there. It says there's a yes. Are you interested in participating in change group? Hit yes. We're going to gather all of those, and then near the end of the year, we'll do another pitch for everybody again. See if we can get some more people, and then once we're ready, we'll connect with you. You'll fill out like a survey eventually that gets your schedule and stage of life and some of that stuff. We'll start forming groups, and we'll get them rolling kind of right away in January. And so that is what's happening there. But the reality is too, it's not only a change group. That's not the only thing that like you can keep on in recovery with. Like it's just moving toward your fears with accountability and support with the right people. And if you've got some of those people, and if you're working these steps and you're like, I'm just going to hit this content again or get some more content from Michael, like all of those things this is what we do as Christ followers, is move toward the broken parts of us, because we're not scared of them, because there's grace there for us and there's hope for change. And so it's the lifelong process that we're going through. So we can keep doing this. And honestly, one of the coolest things is that we're going to do this again. And one of I don't remember what week it was, but at one point we talked about how the pain of our past, we'll only really recover from it when we can make our pain into somebody else's gain. And one of the cool kind of tangible ways to do that is like your invite to this next time we do it, or in the different ways that we do it, could be one of the most important things that happens for somebody else. And that could be a part of your recovery as well, turning all that into bringing somebody else through it and walking alongside them. So that would be the other thing that I would throw out there.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for
all we got.
for leaning in, and those of you that have like showed up every week and done the work, man. So proud of you, and grateful for your trust to like show up every week and kind of lean in, even if it's virtual. Appreciate it, just getting a chat in the comments, and really do hope that you'll consider a change group, and that you'll kind of spread the word for when we do this in the future and help other people experience the help and hope that you've experienced in this workshop as well.
Totally. Thanks for joining in. Much love.